The title of the course is quite a bit modern electrical and electronics technologies. The basic information is shown right here. Say core course for second year mechanical engineering students. There is no lab work as yet in this course. There was a time we used to have a lab associated, but right now because of pandemic, we have decided not to go that way. Objectives. The main objective is to make you, the mechanical engineers of tomorrow, sufficiently familiar with various electrical engineering technologies. Course outcomes. Number one, you should be able to describe and analyze the various electrical measuring instruments. Voltmeter, ammeter, cathode ray oscilloscope, wattmeter, energy meter, and in fact there's a lot more than that. You should be able to describe and analyze transformers. Transformers are entities that are used to increase or decrease AC voltages. You see them around you all the time. We will be dealing with that topic in detail. Then same thing for DC generators and DC motors. DC generators obviously are meant to produce DC voltage given rotary mechanical input power. And DC motors do the opposite. They are given DC input and they produce rotating output, mechanical rotary output. Objective 4 is obviously about AC motors and AC generators. There's a lot of them that we will be dealing with: induction motors, synchronous motors, and so on. And then at the end, we will be talking about electrical drives and electrical heating systems. You will be getting the CIF from me after the lecture. There is no need for me to go through each and every word in detail, but the idea is that we will review some of the basics of electrical engineering: current, voltage, power, energy, instantaneous signals versus DC signals, and so on. A concept called power factor, power triangle, and so on. Single phase versus three phase systems. I'm not going to go in detail on that right now, but be aware. And then we would delve into measuring instruments of various types. That would be unit 1, which will be around 12 lectures. Then unit 2 is about transformers, theory and construction, some basic equations that we use to predict the EMF generated, kind of losses, efficiency, equivalent circuits, and a lot of things here. So these 2 units will take us to the midterm exam. After the midterm exam, we will start talking about DC machines. Machines is a general word which means generators and motors. So DC machines essentially means DC generators and DC motors. That's about 8 lectures. Then we will talk about AC machines and machines which are special. That means they are both AC and DC. There are many machines nowadays which actually work on both AC and DC. So that also will be part of unit 4. And there are special applications for motors. Like not all the time you need motors that are continuously rotating. Sometimes you need them to move through a certain angle and then stop, and so on. So we will go to all those things in detail in unit 4. Unit 5 will be the last one, which will be about electrical drives and electrical heating. Grading policy, mid-semester exam has got 30% weightage, and semester exam has 45% weightage. Quizzes, at least two, maybe three, will have 25% weightage. Assignments will be given regularly, but you don't have to submit them. They are for you to do so that you can do well in quizzes and exams. Assignments are actually the basis on which quizzes and exams will be designed. Okay. There is no single book that can include everything done in this course, but still I have given you one generic book and I can supply you e-copies anytime. My own notes will be there and notes by my colleagues would also be there, which will be quite helpful besides the book that I am referring. Now, as mechanical engineers, you still know reasonably well about what electrical engineering is all about. You have been told in several other courses about concepts like current and voltage. So I will not waste too much of your time, but I would still go through the basic definitions once. Electrical current is rate of flow of electrical charge. That means coulomb per second. And that is defined as an ampere. Okay. That is one of the most fundamental quantities you will have to deal with all the time. Voltage is another one. It is also known as potential difference. You will be getting all these notes from me. Okay. It is defined as the work required in moving one coulomb charge from one point to another. That will be the potential difference between the 2 points. Obviously, the unit is, work and energy are the same thing. So unit is joule per coulomb for voltage. Actually, 1 volt is defined as 1 joule per coulomb. Power is a concept that mechanical engineers and electrical engineers use equally. Obviously, you know that power is measured in watts, which is nothing but joule per second. Energy per unit time is power. So current, voltage, and power, and finally energy. These are the four things that we will be talking about a lot in this course. Energy. Again, this is commonly used in both electrical engineering and mechanical engineering world. If power is constant with time, then you simply multiply it by the time to get the total energy over that period of time. Otherwise, you have to do integration. Okay, an interesting problem. Show that the two definitions of power, one is volt into ampere and the other is joule per second. The first one is used in electrical engineering. The second one is typically used in mechanical engineering. Show that these two definitions are equivalent to each other. How do we handle this? start with volt multiplied by ampere and write the definitions of volt and ampere. Volt is energy per unit charge or work per unit charge. Current is charge per unit time. So if you multiply these units, charge gets cancelled out. What you get is energy per unit time. And that is the mechanical definition of power. So the definition that we in electrical engineering use is the same as what you guys use in mechanical engineering. There's no difference. Power is power in both the domains. Now, another thing that you have already seen, I'm sure, a lot is that whether it's current, voltage, or power, or even energy, they can be either functions of time or constant with time. If they are functions of time, we call them AC, alternating current signals. And if they are constant with time, typically the word used is DC. Although it is not the correct word because DC means direct current, but we still say direct DC voltage. Actually, we should be saying DV, direct voltage, but typical nomenclature says DC voltage. And even we say AC voltage. This is not right, but we do it anyway. AC means alternating in typical language that we are using nowadays. Although strictly speaking, AC means alternating current, but we use the word AC as if it means alternating. If voltages and currents are constant with time, they are known as direct voltage and direct current. And the acronym is DC. I've already told you that. These are things you know already, so let's not spend too much time on this. Now, if these quantities, voltage and current, they change with time, you will see two different cases. One is that the value repeats itself after a certain time period. Then it is called periodic current or periodic voltage. And the other is it could vary in unpredictable fashion with time. Then that's a different case. Fortunately, a lot of real life cases involve periodic currents and periodic voltage because the way we generate them using rotary mechanical input power ensures that the values repeat themselves after every after a certain value of time, which is known as time period. The voltage that comes to your homes has got a frequency, that means number of cycles per second, equal to 50, 50. So the time period is 1 upon 50, 1 divided by 50 seconds for that voltage, which means 20 milliseconds. You can do the calculation yourself. Typically, we use small letters, small English letters, for describing quantities that are varying with time. And we use capital letters for DC values or for average value or RMS value of AC signals. Signals is a word which is commonly used to describe either current or voltage or even power and sometimes even energy. So signal is a generic word. It means the quantity can be current, voltage, power, or even energy. Okay. I will end up using the word signal a lot. So don't get too confused. It's not a different quantity. It means one of these four quantities. Ohm's law, you know it very well. No need to spend too much time on it. If you apply a certain voltage across a resistor, the current produced is related to voltage applied by this formula, P equal to Ri, where R is the resistance of the resistor in ohms, assuming that you are measuring voltage in volts and current in amperes. So you were taught all this in physics several times, so I'm not going to spend too much time. But there is a numerical problem here. I've given the solution, of course. But it's very difficult to ask you to solve problems when we are in online mode. So I'll provide you the solution. But first thing I want you to do is think about this given problem for a minute. Then I'll show you the solution. A 10 ohm resistor is connected across a 12 volt battery. Battery means DC voltage. You can buy batteries in market. They are chemical techniques used to generate voltage. They don't use rotary mechanical power. Batteries are a different method of generating DC volts, DC voltages. They are chemical techniques. Now, the question is, if you have a 12 volt battery and it is applied across a 10 ohm resistor, it is connected across a 10 ohm resistor, how much energy would the resistor consume over a continuous 45-minute period? How would you handle this? They want the answer to be energy, not current or voltage. In fact, voltage is given anyway. So this is the schematic. 12 volt DC going into 10 ohm resistor. So the current produced will obviously be 12 divided by 10 amperes, Ohm's law, which is 1.2 amperes. Not a big issue, right? Once you know current and you know the voltage being applied, multiply the two to get the power in watts. So 12 volt multiplied by 1.2 amperes will give you the power consumed in the resistance. It will become, I think, 14.4 watt or something. I have the solution. Yeah, 14.4 watt. You can calculate the power consumed by simply multiplying V and I. And since I is V divided by R, you can also write the same as V square divided by R. Or since V is Ri, you can also write power as I square R. There are three different ways of writing the formula for power. Either you write Vi, or you write I square R, or you write V square divided by R. It's the same thing. Either way, the answer will be 14.4 watt. But that's not what they want. They want the energy consumed over a 45-minute time period. Power is energy per unit second, right? Watt is joule per second. So 45 minutes means 45 multiplied by 60 seconds. You multiply this 14.4 watt by that many seconds to get the energy. Hopefully, there is no mistake in my calculations. So the answer turns out to be 38.88 kilojoules. That's the answer. These are the kind of things in real life you will have to deal with all the time. Simple calculations, but you should be able to do them quickly. Okay. Next, energy is measured in a unit called kilowatt hour. kWh. This is the unit that electricity boards use in determining how much money they should charge you. When they say unit, they mean kilowatt hour. Okay. So we'll come to this unit again and again as we proceed. The next problem is repeat problem 2, that means the previous problem, and express the answer in kilowatt hour, not in joules. So how do you handle that? The definition is clear enough, I hope. Kilowatt hour means you measure power in kilowatt and measure time in hours. So if you repeat this problem and try to get the answer in kilowatt hour, not in joules, what they expect you to do is calculate the power first, then convert that power into kilowatts. So it will become 14.4 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 3 kilowatts. And also convert the time into hours. 45 minutes will be 0.75 hours. And then multiply the two values to get the answer in kilowatt hour. You see, power age in kilowatt, it is 0.0144. That means 14.4 multiplied by 10 raised to the power minus 3. Time was 45 minutes. So in hours, it is 3 divided by 4. Multiply the two, kilowatt and hour. You get the energy in kilowatt rather than joules. So it works out to 0.0108 kilowatt hour. Answer is 0.01 kilowatt hour in this case. And the same problem in the previous case gave us the answer 38.88 kilojoules. So now you can see that there must be a definite relationship between joules and kilowatt hour. And that is the next problem. Derive the convergence formula for converting kilowatt hour energy values to joules and vice versa. Here I have tried to do it. This is the convergence that you will need a lot of times in this course. 1 kilowatt hour is what? 1000 watt multiplied by 3600 second. Okay. And you know that watt into second is joules. So 3600 into 1000 joules. Simple, very simple actually. 1 kilowatt hour is 36 into 10 raised to the power 5 joules. That's the conversion formula. Or you can say 3.6 multiplied by 10 raised to the power 6 joules. 1 kilowatt hour is 3.6 megajoules. You can do the other way around also. 1 joule will be 1 divided by 3.6 into 10 to the power 6 kilowatt hour, which I done here. It turns out to be approximately 2.7777 and so on into 10 to the power minus 7 kilowatt hour. You can Google this question actually. You will see these values on the net. How much is 1 kilowatt hour equal to in joules and how much is 1 joule equal to in kilowatt hour. You'll get these two numbers in Google anytime. Very easy to figure out in any case. So converting energy from joules to kilowatt hour and kilowatt hours to joule must be pretty simple if you have done it a couple of times. Yeah, this problem 4 is nothing but a simple modification of problem 3. You can handle it yourself. Now, next one. A 200 volt DC source is feeding a 78 ohm resistor. Interesting. Okay. Calculate the energy consumed. You see, in this course, the obsession is energy and power, not voltage and current. You can see that already, I'm sure. As mechanical engineers, you will be dealing with energy and power. Electrical current and electrical voltage are the background quantities that you will have to know. So here the question again is about energy. A 200 volt DC source is feeding a 78 ohm resistor. Calculate the energy consumed in the resistor over a 2-hour period. Again, it's not that difficult. Now they have not asked the answer in kilowatt hour or joule, so you can do either way. The first thing to do is to calculate the power consumed in the resistor. So 200 volt divided by 78 ohm will give you the current. And then you can use I square R formula to get the power. That's number one step. Current turns out to be approximately 2.5641 amperes. And then I square R gives you about 512.82 watt. That much is the power consumed. In kilowatt, the power will be 0.51282. So if you want the answer, anyway, first we are calculating the answer in joules. So you take watt multiplied by time in seconds. How much is the time? 2 hours. So 120 minutes multiplied by 60. So many seconds. So I hope there's no mistake here. Hours. 120. Yeah, I think it's correct. 2 hours has 7200 seconds, right? Double check my calculations. If you see a mistake, let me know. We'll correct it. More important is to understand the procedure. So energy in joules will be power in watts multiplied by time in seconds. Okay, double check my calculations, please. Now, if you want the answer in kilowatt hour, you can either use the conversion formula that we have already derived, or even directly you can figure it out by converting the power into kilowatts, and time is already given in hours. So either way you can do it, and you should be able to get the answer in kilowatt hours. Sorry, I've jumped too far. So the answer is either 3692.3 joules or 1.52565 kilowatt. As I said, the electricity boards do not use joules, they use kilowatt. That is what they call 1 unit. Now the next one is an interesting modification of the previous case. A 200 volt DC source is connected to a 78 ohm resistor through a single pole, single throw SPST switch. The word switch is missing here. Sorry about that. These switches, single pole, single throw switches, you see them around you all the time. When you turn on the fan, you press a switch. That's single pole, single throw switch. It has one signal coming in and only one possibility for that signal to go to. Either it's open or closed. That's it. We will be talking about switches later in the course in detail. So single pole, single throw switch means the switch is either allowing the current to go through or it is simply not allowing the current to go through. So what they are doing is connecting a 200 volt battery to a 78 ohm resistor through a switch which is open to begin with. That means no current would flow. At time equal to 0, switch closes. Initially it was open. Let's assume that in the beginning it was open, and at t equal to 0, the switch closes for 1 minute. That means 60 seconds. Then it is open for next 2 minutes. That means for next 120 seconds, it's open. Then it closes for next 3 minutes. And finally, it becomes open again. So what is happening here is that power is a function of time. It is unlike the previous cases where power was the same for all times. Here it's not the case. Depending on the time, you will see a different amount of power. In some cases, you may see no power when switch is open. So you cannot calculate energy directly. You'll have to calculate power for each of these time intervals separately and multiply by that time interval to get the energy in that time interval, and then sum up the total, sum of the individual energy values. So what they want is how much energy would be consumed over the entire 6-minute period. It's a 6-minute period, out of which the first minute is when the current flows. For the next 2 minutes, no current flows. And for the final 3 minutes, the current again flows. So 3 different time intervals are involved. And then, of course, circuit becomes open. Let's see. Case 1, when time is between 0 and 60 seconds. Here, the switch is closed, so current will flow. And the value is same as we did in the previous problem. 200 divided by 78 amperes. And you calculate the power by using I square R formula or by some other formula. Power in this period is 512.8205 watts. No issue. Now energy in this period will be this power multiplied by time in seconds. That is the answer in joules. So E1, energy in this interval, you can verify these calculations. Energy turns out to be 30.7692 kilojoules. Hope you can read this. This is the entire calculation. Now, part B is when switch is open for 180 seconds. So no current would flow. Power will be 0 and energy would also be 0. In part B, no energy consumption will take Simple enough. In part C, the switch is closed again, but now it is closed for 180 seconds. Yeah. You can calculate the power. It will be the same as in part A. Power doesn't change. Whatever value you got in part A will apply here also, because it's the same circuit. But energy would now be this power multiplied by time, which is 180 seconds. So you can see the value of energy in joules. I have given the value in kilowatt hour also. If you want, you can use that also. So the final answer will be sum up the three individual energy values. This is called numerical integration. Okay. Discrete values are there, so you sum them up. If there was a continuous variation in power with time, we would have to do actual integration. This is not that case. Here we have constant values, but they are different for three different intervals. In fact, in the second interval, the value is 0. Sum of the three values, one of them is 0 anyway, and you get the final answer. Again, I request you to double check the calculations. Now, moving forward, though we don't have a lot of time left today, as I said, the word signal will be used a lot, which means either current or voltage or power or even energy. Signal can be constant with time, which means DC signal, or it can be AC signal, which means varying with time. And in AC signals, as I already mentioned, we can have periodic signals or non-periodic signals. We would generally ignore non-periodic signals. Periodic signals are the ones we will be talking a lot about. A periodic signal, whether it's current or voltage or power or even energy, it is the one that repeats itself after a certain time period, capital T, which is known as the time period of the signal. We have been taught all this. Okay, so it's a brushing up that's going on right. Now, let's concentrate first on voltage, periodic voltage. We will be using small letters to describe periodic quantities. So I am writing small v as a function of small t. As this is a generic representation, generic mathematical representation of a periodic voltage signal. Vm is supposed to be peak value or maximum value. Omega is, I'm sure you know this already, omega is something called angular frequency. It is measured in radians per second. Theta v is the phase shift or phase angle of the signal. Small letters are used to generally represent instantaneous, that means time varying values of a signal. So this generic representation is what we are going to be using a lot. For specific cases, you will see that maybe theta v would be 0, or it may be pi by 2, maybe minus pi by 2 in radians again. Omega is 2 pi multiplied by the frequency of the signal. So for the signal that comes to your home, omega will be 2 pi into 50 radians per second. And the signal that comes to our homes has an RMS value. I'll talk about RMS value a little more in detail later. RMS value is 220 volt approximately. So peak value will be 220 multiplied by square root of 2. So Vm will be 220 multiplied by square root of 2, whatever is that value. That's a particular case I'm talking about. So please remember this generic representation of an instantaneous voltage signal, which is period. You have not seen cathode ray oscilloscope in a real life, but I'm sure in basic electronics labs, you have been shown that instrument. That instrument is commonly used to actually measure Vm, omega, theta V, etc. for a given voltage signal. All the talk I am doing today is the introduction that we need before we start talking about measuring instruments. These basics are needed before we even talk about measuring them. This particular case, if you look at, suppose theta V is 0. That means the phase angle of the signal is 0. Then the equation would reduce to Vm cos omega t. If theta V is minus pi by 2, I think it would become sine omega t. Double check that. But point is, this cosine is generic. In reality, you may see a sine function also, depending on theta V value. If the time period is capital T, then omega is defined as 2 pi divided by capital T. And time period of the signal is related to frequency by equation 3. These are some basic equations concerning the equation 1. Suppose theta V is 0, then small v is simply Vm cos omega t. If theta V is minus pi by 2, you'll get Vm sin omega t. You can check it out yourself. If I put theta V equal to minus pi by 2 in equation 1, I'll get small v equal to Vm cos omega t minus pi by 2. So cos omega t minus pi by 2, you can work it out yourself. It should turn out to be sin omega t. Yeah, this is how the signal looks like if you plot it. Based on equation 1, and for a particular case where theta V is minus 90 degrees, that means minus pi by 2 radians. This is how the waveform would look like on the cathode ray oscilloscope.